Good evening. Welcome to The Big Question on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram, and tonight on The Big Question, we're looking at a critical long-term strategic move by the government. India has now approved this 7,280 crore rupee PLI scheme. This scheme is to manufacture sintered rare earth permanent magnets. Big term, but we'll break it down for you. This is the core component which you will find inside everything from EV motors, your wind turbines, your smartphones, missile guidance systems, aircraft parts, telecom networks, and in the medical world, there are the MRI machines that use them too. So, which is why, because there is such a wide use of these magnets, that's why this big PLI push is coming through. But there is a larger story, because India today is overwhelmingly dependent on imports. In 2024-25, India has imported almost 55,000 metric tons of rare earth. And where did it come from? 65% of those supplies actually came from China. And China not only exports these rare earths, it controls 70% of global mining. It also controls 90% of global processing of rare earths. It has repeatedly weaponized this dominance. China has in the past. It has tightened export licenses. It has imposed restrictions, especially during geopolitical conflicts. And very recently, in April and October 2025 as well, we've seen instances of this play out, which is why it has been on the big question. The importance of India to really get its act together when it comes to rare earths. This matters because rare earths, they are the backbone of clean energy, of mobility, electronics, defense, strategic autonomy. And all of these are pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Our self-reliance goals are etched out very clearly. And these, when you talk about all these sectors, whether it's mobility, electronics, defense, all of these, including clean energy, all of these are very important for our Atmanirbharta. Despite having the fifth largest reserves, though, and India does have them, we're talking about rare earths, we hold the fifth largest reserves of rare earths, but we produce less than 1% of the global output. And why is this? It's largely because mining and separation, they have been dominated by a single entity. We're talking about IREL. This is the single PSU that does that. There is limited private participation. We use older technology. There are regulatory bottlenecks. Now, is that likely to change? The process is, of course, like I mentioned, it's difficult. The processing of rare earths. It involves handling radioactive material. It requires mining, which, of course, has environmental consequences. It requires advanced technology. And there are strict safeguards you need. And also, very importantly, you need high capital. So now that the government has this big push towards the magnets, the new PLI is meant to change all of this. It's going to promote domestic manufacturing of sintered permanent magnets, which are made by compressing and heating rare earth alloys. They are compressed into dense, high-strength magnets, which are very essential for high-performance electric vehicles and green energy systems. So now this scheme aims to set up 5 manufacturing units. Each of these are going to have 1,200 tons of annual capacity. It's going to create 6,000 tons of magnets a year. It is going to run for 7 years. That's the plan under the PLI. 2 years are going to be for companies to build the plants, and then followed by 5 years of these incentives playing out during that entire production. But industry leaders, they're calling this a significant step towards a stable supply chain for EVs and electronics and clean energy. And the government is saying that India could become Atmanirbhar in rare earth magnets in just 3 to 4 years, which would sharply reduce our import dependence on China. But of course, now the big question is this PLI enough? Is it enough to truly secure India's supply chain, something that we really need? Is it going to cut our vulnerability to China? And joining us this evening on the big question, we have quite a lineup over here. Let's talk to Vinny Mehta, the Director General of ACMA. ACMA is, of course, the Automotive Component Manufacturers Association of India, and they require these magnets indeed. Rishabh Jain is also with us. He's a fellow at CEEW, the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Good to have you with us. Saurabh Agarwal is partner and automotive tax leader at EY. And Jayant Das Gupta, former Indian ambassador at the World Trade Organization. And Sardar Mohanty is also with us, the Chairman and Managing Director of IREL India. Mr. Mohanty, if I can begin by asking you, sir, in terms of what we've had by way of rare earths, because I understand that our potential has been huge, but processing on that part of it, we haven't moved as much as we should have, which is why there's a great dependence on China. Now with the PLI scheme, how much of that is likely to change according to you?
Okay. Good evening to all. Actually, the point is the capability of IREL. We have to look into two perspective. So all these days, these rare earth elements were no takers were there. In 2000, in the year 2000, IREL first tried to look into this magnet making facilities. When we were trying for this, we have floated some expression of interest, and out of that, except Baldota and some Anaya, these two companies, others all they just shown their interest initially, but never participated. So all what happened is ultimately we could not try to establish this ecosystem in this magnet making, and the prime reason was this price disability. So the price when we are selling this rare earth oxide, particularly NdPr oxide, the price what China is selling at the same price, the IREL is also selling the NdPr oxide. However, making up NdPr oxide to metal, so there is a price disability of around 24%. So that makes the private manufacturers are never coming into and putting up their plant. Since actually IREL is producing NdPr oxide since long, but since the mid segment is not present in India because of this price disability, so obvious reason no industry has come forward.
So the price disability is a very important factor, and I want to take that across to Mr. Saurabh Agarwal from EY, in the sense that the investments haven't been there from the private side at all. IREL has been the torchbearer of sorts, and Mr. Mohanty will tell us a little bit more about how they've been pushing that agenda. But it seems like we are doing a catch-up, and the dependence on China has gone up and quite to our disadvantage, because we've seen a certain amount of weaponization take place as well. But now with this scheme, do you think that private players would be interested into investing in this very crucial space, this sector which provides to so many different sectors?
So Vikram, if you look at the scheme is talking about an integrated plant. Now let's understand that there are three steps into this. One is the upstream, midstream and downstream. As far as downstream is concerned, India is already working on the downstream, wherein we are manufacturing BLDC motors, we are manufacturing other types of motors, we are manufacturing renewable energy devices where the rare earth magnets are actually used. As far as the upstream is concerned, IREL has been working on upstream quite a lot, and the Department of Atomic Energy has also been working on the upstream part. Now, what was missing, or the large missing factor, was the midstream one, which was processing from rare earth oxide into rare earth magnet. That was something which was missing. And what this particular scheme, or many people are calling it as PLI, I will call it as a rare earth magnet program, just like advanced chemistry cell program, because government will be floating a RFP, they will be inviting bids, and accordingly they will be awarding the contract to 5 best bidders. Now, if you see the traction, at least what I can feel from the industry perspective is that there are a lot of people who are interested to get into this area. So far today, I have got so many queries in last 1.5 months wherein people have been inquiring about this particular scheme, because the disability which was there, or which is there, let me put it like this, the part of that disability is getting met out of this particular scheme which the government is coming up with. Second, government is also giving it like a hybrid incentive. They are also offering certain capital subsidy as well. That is what the press release says. So it means it's a combination of a capital subsidy plus an incentive on top of it based on amount of sales which you are doing. And at the same time, the state government will also come up with their own packages, because each state will want that particular facility to be set up in their state. which means that there'll be additional top up in the form of a state government subsidy. And finally, the central government likely, and again, that's a request which will go to the central government, that they should come up with the exemption from basic customs duty as far as import of capital goods for this particular manufacturing is concerned. So overall, I think it's a great scheme with various incentives and other things which will come over a period of time. It will make it viable as far as the Indian entrepreneurs are concerned.
Rishabh Jain, do you agree that this is a great scheme? It gives 2 years for plants to come up and another 5 for scale. Considering where India stands, the current refining, the current processing base that we have, especially for sintered permanent magnets, do you think this kind of timeline is practical, that it could work, the kind of catch-up we need to do right now, because the urgency is quite acute? Do you think we'll be able to accelerate it?
Right. So Vikram, first of all, thank you for the invitation. So this, given where our capabilities are, it's a very ambitious task. There is no doubt about it, because we don't know how to manufacture magnets, and not just India. Most of the countries across the world do not necessarily know. This is a highly technologically intensive process, very technologically complex, and we have not had the experience of doing it in the past. So it's not just getting the machineries. We may not necessarily have the skills. We do not necessarily have the infrastructure. And setting up and stabilizing some of these lines, like many chemical facilities or some of the battery cell manufacturing, it will take time. Maybe we will get delayed. Maybe we will do it on time. But I would say it is good that we have started. I think that is the most important aspect. However, we should also note that the numbers at the same time are, while they are small, while they seem huge, they're very small compared to the global perspectives. For instance, China's current magnet manufacturing is around 240,000 tons itself, whereas what we are planning is 6,000. There are individual companies that are coming up on similar lines in China. US, countries in Europe, Japan are trying, but of course their scale is slightly higher than India. However, again, in China, there's idle capacity of magnets. So China may try again to disrupt the market by reducing the prices. But what is important is that we continue with our momentum. Even if the price reduces going forward, we still figure out how do we ensure the offtake of some of these companies going forward. Converting, I mean, from 0 to 6,000 will be most difficult, but 6,000 to 60,000 may be easier. But let's close this loop now.
Well, closing the loop is very important for the auto industry. If you can tell us from your experience, Mr. Mehta, how do you think your industry has relied on China in the past, and how much is it likely to change thanks to this scheme, this PLI scheme?
Vikram, thank you for having me. As you have very rightly put that 90% of the processing of the magnet happens in China, and not just India, the world over. The dependence has been on China on import of rare earth magnets. And, in April, they put the export embargo. Then we've been working closely with the government. The government and the industry are indeed extremely concerned because speaking only from an automotive industry's perspective, the auto industry, that is the vehicle industry and the component industry together, last year we consumed around 800 million tons of rare earth magnets. And now that if there's and since April, there were about 50 odd companies that applied for the licenses, 50 plus in fact, and right now only 4 to 5 companies have got the license. So it's a huge concern for us how to secure the supply chain, and therefore this is indeed a very, very great step in that direction to secure the supply chain, to plug in the vulnerability that we have. And therefore, this is the first step. And I think it's a really welcome step from our perspective. And the only concern is that while it does take practically 2 years to sort of literally get the project going off the ground, to productionize it, what happens in that 2-year period? There's no water flowing from the tap. So it's a huge, huge concern for us at this juncture. And we are hoping that the industry will be able to quickly ramp up in much lesser a time. So coming from that perspective, yeah.
We have to do it in a much lesser time. Ambassador Jayan Dasgupta, how do you think India needs to play this? Because yes, there has been that over-reliance on China. But at this time, if we have to do the catch-up, we also need technology. There are these gaps that Rishabh Jain is pointing out as well. How are we going to be able to do that without partnerships, say, with a US or an Australia or a Japan? Do you think our dependence on China is just going to shift? Or do you think we can do it on our own, in which case it might take longer?
I think it'll have to be a mix of both the options. The Chinese are not going to give us this technology from what I can read. So we have to get it from the next best source. And the Japanese, of course, they have now invested hugely, and they are also going in for a lot of research. As far as the Americans are concerned, they produce a lot of rare earth ores, which they ship out to China to convert the ores into magnets. So the Americans also don't have the technology as of now. So it is going to be a concerted effort. That is one thing. And we must, put our heads together to see if we can come up with quick solutions. The second aspect is that irrespective of what, we do with the Americans and the Japanese and the Australians, we need to, go out on our own also and invest heavily in research and development, because the processing of the ores and then the conversion into metal and then alloys and then magnets, this three-stage process, apart from the environmental aspects, there is a lot of technology also involved. And that technology, if we develop it on our own, we may not succeed in 2 years' time, but it is well worth the try, because this is an imperative. We just can't avoid, facing this problem. So we need to do it on our own, as well as try for collaborative arrangements with the Americans, Japanese, Australians, and any other country in the West which has the technology.
It begs the question, and perhaps Mr. Mohanty can answer it, how have we done it so far? Yes, there are those environmental challenges too. There are several social and political issues connected with this, and perhaps we haven't been able to push the agenda as quickly as we wanted because there are other factors at play. For your company, how have you been able to maneuver around these problems so far to reach where you have? How much time has it taken? And where do you see now in hindsight, if we had to shorten the gap for many other companies that would look at this PLI scheme and see it as an opportunity, if they have to hasten where you have reached and do it in a constricted time, what would they have to do differently?
Okay, the major hurdles for this augmentation of this production process is this environmental clearance, as well as if you see that India is the third largest producer of this, having the resources of this rare earth. But at the same time, if you see this surface right, whether this entire area where this beach sand mineral is in the placer deposits. So placer deposits are thickly populated. So if you go for those placer deposits, so then you have to evacuate those inhabitants, then only you can mine it. That is one aspect. There are several opposition takes place at South India particularly, where the mining activities are practically not possible. So basically, we are looking at those. If you go to the slightly northern side, eastern part of India, there you will find that the content of the material goes linear. So on that basis, what happens? You have to use lot of raw sand to get little quantity of monazite, which is the source ore for this rare earth.
Correct.
So monazite is one aspect, is radioactive, and exponentially you cannot increase your production because it is not very environmental friendly also. So for that purpose, what IREL is doing is, right now we have to look for other sources. So India is also having, like in Rajasthan and Gujarat, where Amba Dongara is there 1,40,000 14 million ton of rare earth oxide is there.
Yeah.
So where it has got a content of this heavy rare earth also. And if you see NdPr oxide of 1,14,000 ton is available over there, which can cater to the requirement of magnet for 10 years.
Right.
So if you see full throttle, the magnet requirement will be there in the country. It will be around 8,000 ton in the year 2030, which we also, earlier it was discussed 2,40,000 ton is produced by China, but India is to 2,900 only. So the basic reason is China is supplying to the world over.
Exactly.
So India is producing 2,900 and there is no user in India earlier. Last 2 years before, there was no user to this material, and we had a G2G arrangement with Japan for supplying this material. Otherwise, where you can put this material earlier.
Right.
So now the time has come. We are going for all out for this purpose, and it can be ramped up. Not more than 3 years time, and government has given all kind of support, like we have also got this public hearing exemption. So on that way, this will hasten the process, statutory clearances, and putting up this process and other things in the upstream, these companies will burst and it can be put up. So to bring out this midstream, this kind of 43% of the disability, and with this, the technology, there are so many technology providers are there.
Yes.
And like Sinetsu, Proterial, and VAC, back of Germany.
Yes.
They are all available everywhere, and so it is not a big deal. We can establish the ecosystem within a couple of years.
So building the ecosystem is not the real challenge, Rishabh Jain. If these statutory clearances come through more easily than they have in the past, and perhaps this entire scheme is going to help, because then there is an ecosystem that you're trying to create. But talking of an ecosystem, then do we need a multi-pronged approach? Does this strategy need to be broader than just a push towards magnets when it comes to mining, when it comes to building, our refining, our recycling? Does all of that need to change as well, where you have a strategy which is more multi-pronged than this entire push towards magnets and creating these manufacturing units?
100%, Vikram, there's no doubt about it. And I'd say sometimes in policymaking, we are often reactive. We have to move to a proactive policymaking. Now, what do I necessarily mean by this? One, the government has come up with various schemes, including the National Critical Minerals Mission earlier this year to incentivize mining, processing, and recycling. Now, of course, the magnet manufacturing. Earlier, we had schemes like FAME, PLI for battery manufacturing, etc. So the government is trying to build the value chains from the mine to circularity, and at least for the EV sector, and there are many others. However, the bigger challenge for most of these companies is always the cost competitiveness. What we saw, the trade restrictions that emerged out of China, now they have put in abeyance for 12 months. The challenge is that what if they continue this abeyance and they continue to supply magnets, rare earth oxide at very low, magnets basically at very low rates? How will these companies survive in the long term? Which then means that the offtake and guarantee of offtake is very important.
Yes.
India's auto sector contributes heavily to India's GDP. And I'll give you an example. There are magnets which may be less than $1 or maybe 100 rupees itself, but can stop the whole production line because they're so important for the safety of the vehicle.
Indeed.
Finally, what we need is we have to think of what are the alternative technologies that are there. So one is, of course, we can build magnets, but there are also alternative motors that do not require these magnets, and they're okay for two-wheelers and maybe the smaller vehicles.
Sure.
So it's alternative technologies, ensure there's offtake, and then finally, of course, you spoke about the circularity, so that some of these can again go back to increase the availability of oxides.
So Vinny Mehta, in these first 2 years, before the units actually come up, and what Rishabh is pointing out, the immediate capability gaps, when you talk about technology or talent or capital, the industry needs to close these and be open for investment. How ready is your industry, at least the auto industry, which has so much reliance on these magnets? How do you see that shaping up?
Vikram, what I understand is, and the Ministry of Heavy Industry did take a meeting of the industry, and there was quite a bit of interest, a very big interest from the industry to be partnering with the government in this particular area. So I'm pretty hopeful that, what the government is doing, the industry will come together and we will work towards Atmanirbharta. So I'm
That's the
very
hope.
hopeful that this will be a very successful scheme. That's the hope. The issue is, again, the price competitiveness. You have to ensure that, it shouldn't so happen that we start manufacturing and then lo and behold, China opens the floodgates and, they can any which way undercut anybody. And then, your investments are put to risk. So that is something we have to be very wary of. We have to be very nimble-footed at that. And
Yes.
parallelly, we have to evaluate technologies that are beyond magnets.
Indeed.
So that is something we have to work out. Yeah.
Yes. So as I see it, and from what I'm hearing, India's rare earth magnet PLI scheme, it's more than just an industrial policy push. It sits at the intersection of manufacturing ambition, clean tech demand as well. There is the environmental responsibility part of it. There are strategic geopolitics and those kind of concerns we need to address. The next 7 years are going to tell us whether India can convert what is an opportunity into true supply chain security and whether we can be globally competitive as well. This is a discussion that is going to go on, but for the moment, I'll have to wrap it up. A big thank you to Vinny Mehta, Rishabh Jain, Saurabh Agarwal, Jayan Das Gupta, Mr. Sarda Mohanty. Thank you very much for joining us with those insights into what is clearly a deep demand for India. And right now, a PLI scheme that seems to be addressing that. We'll see how far it goes. And viewers, with that, it's going to be a wrap on this edition of The Big Question. But the questions keep rising, and we will keep posing them to the people who matter and who give us the answers. But for the moment, from me, Vikram Oza, and the entire team, thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.